The dress. My husband gave me a dress for our anniversary. An hour later, he called. "So, did you try it on?" I answered calmly. "Your sister already took it." Silence on the other end of the line. And then he screamed, "What have you done, you idiot? Do you even understand what's going to happen now? But before we continue, drop a comment and let us know what country you're from and how old you are. Enjoy the story. Sarah lived without illusions. By the age of 38, illusions tend to run out. Along with the first marriage, along with the first, it'll work itself out somehow. And the first, he's just tired, don't pay attention. The second time around, she wasn't marrying a dream. She was marrying a person, calm, seemingly reliable, someone who knew how to carry himself in public. David was 3 years older than her. He spoke little, listened carefully, knew when to bring medicine, when to pay a bill, and when to smile at a dinner party. It wasn't passion, it was convenience. Sarah admitted that to herself honestly, without self-judgment. She'd already had passion. Her first husband had been exactly that, bright, unpredictable, and utterly draining. David felt like a quiet harbor. Sarah worked in the procurement department of a large trading company in Chicago. Nothing romantic. Spreadsheets, suppliers, negotiations, deadlines. But she loved that work. She loved the order in numbers. Loved it when everything added up. When something didn't add up, she dug until she found the reason. That quality would later save her life. The first 2 years were ordinary. Shared breakfasts, shared weekends, shared silence in front of the television. Sarah wasn't waiting for fireworks. She was waiting for stability. And at first, stability was there. Then something began to change. David started checking his phone more often. That alone means nothing. Everyone has phones. Everyone has messages. But there's a difference between someone reading work emails and someone reading something else entirely. The second type holds the phone slightly differently, a little closer to the body, the screen tilted just a bit away, and they respond to notifications just a fraction faster than necessary. Sarah noticed, but she said nothing. She knew how to wait. Around the same time, David unexpectedly brought up insurance. "Hey," he said one evening while they sat in the kitchen, "when did you last update your life insurance?" "Why?" Sarah asked. "Just thinking, just in case. Life is unpredictable. I want to make sure that if anything ever happened, you'd be protected." Sarah nodded, but she made a mental note. Then he asked again, a few weeks later, differently, almost in passing. He mentioned a good agent someone had supposedly recommended, said he'd already looked into it, all that was left was signing the paperwork. Sarah nodded again, and said nothing again. But that evening she opened her laptop and began quietly checking their shared finances. What she found wasn't a disaster. Not yet. But several transactions looked strange. Small amounts being moved to an account she couldn't immediately identify. Not large amounts. Small enough not to catch the eye. Regular enough not to be a coincidence. She took screenshots, just in case. David's sister, Ashley, was the youngest in the family. Louder, quicker to take offense, and far less composed than her brother. She lived about an hour from Chicago, in a small suburb, worked as an administrator at a dental clinic, and apparently felt that life had treated her unfairly. In what way, exactly, Sarah never fully understood. Ashley had an apartment, a car, a job, a boyfriend who seemed to genuinely love her. But Ashley always looked at other people's things with that particular expression, one you can't mistake for anything else. not open envy, more like a quiet certainty that other people's things belonged to her, at least a little. She came over without warning. That was irritating on its own. But worse was the fact that she always left with something. A jar of good coffee from the kitchen cabinet, a scarf that happened to be in the entryway, a book Sarah hadn't finished yet. "You don't mind, do you?" Ashley would say, already standing at the door with someone else's belongings in her hand. It wasn't a question. It was a statement. Sarah never argued. Life is too short to argue over coffee and scarves. But she noticed, and she remembered. David always took his sister's side, not openly, not rudely, just smoothly, as though it were the most natural thing in the world. She doesn't mean anything by it. That's just how she is. You understand. Sarah understood. She understood even more than she wished she did. The dress appeared on the day of their 3rd anniversary. David came home carrying a large branded shopping bag from a boutique. Sarah hadn't expected anything like it. He wasn't the type for expensive, spontaneous gestures. She felt something close to warmth. Almost. Inside the bag was an evening gown, deep burgundy, floor-length, with thin spaghetti straps and an open back. Expensive, you could see that immediately. Beautiful, objectively, but not her style. Not her style at all. Sarah wore tailored pantsuits, neat blouses, and occasionally a classic knee-length dress. This gown was something else entirely, too revealing, too theatrical. She picked it up. The fabric was soft, almost silky, and there was something else, a faint smell. Not perfume, something different, slightly chemical, barely noticeable. Sarah sniffed it again. She decided it was just the smell of a new store, new material. "It's beautiful," she said. "Wear it tonight," David said. "We're going to dinner. I already made a reservation." His voice was even, maybe just slightly more even than usual. Sarah looked at the dress again, caught that barely perceptible scent again. "Okay," she said. "Let me shower and change." After hearing Sarah's reply, David said, "I'll call you in a little while," and went outside. Sarah hung the dress on the wardrobe door and went to the bathroom. She stood under the hot water and thought, about nothing specific, just thought. About how David had been strange lately, about the insurance, about the screenshots of bank transactions, about how the gift was too expensive for a man who, by all evidence, was having money troubles, about how the dress wasn't quite her size. Well, the sizing was right, but the cut. David had never bought her clothes before. How would he suddenly know what looked good on her? And then the doorbell rang. Sarah wrapped herself in her robe and went to answer it. Ashley was on the doorstep, wide smile, bag over her shoulder, clearly dropping by for no particular reason, unannounced, as always. "Hey, is Dave home? I was in the neighborhood." "Come in," said Sarah. Ashley came in, looked around, and immediately spotted the dress hanging on the wardrobe door. Her eyes changed. Sarah knew that expression. "Oh, wow," Ashley said, moving closer. "Where did that come from?" "A gift," Sarah answered, "for our anniversary." "It's gorgeous." Ashley touched the fabric. "Can I try it on?" "Go ahead." Ashley didn't need to be asked twice. She grabbed the dress, ducked into the bathroom, came out a few minutes later, and the dress fit her beautifully. Maybe even better than it would have fit Sarah. Ashley had a different figure, more striking, more dramatic. The dress was made for exactly that kind of figure. It fits me perfectly, Ashley said, studying herself in the hallway mirror. Like it was made for me. Take it, said Sarah. Ashley turned around. Seriously? Seriously, it looks better on you. Ashley didn't ask twice. She took off the dress, folded it neatly back into the branded bag, taking the bag too, naturally, and left with a parting, "You're the best!" Sarah closed the door and quietly exhaled. She didn't know then, not for certain, what had just happened, but something inside her went calm. An hour later, David called. "So, are you ready? Did you try on the dress?" "Yes," Sarah said, "but Ashley already took it. She loved it, so I gave it to her." Silence, long silence, and then, not just irritation, panic, real, undisguised panic in his voice. "What did you do?" he practically screamed. "Are you out of your mind? Do you understand what you've done, you idiot?" Sarah had never heard anything like that from him before, not once in 3 years. He had always been even, quiet, controlled, and now he was unraveling. That alone answered a lot of questions. "David," she said calmly, "she's your sister. She liked it. I gave it to her." "Call her, right now. Tell her to bring it back." "Why?" "Because I said so." "That's not enough of a reason," Sarah replied, and she hung up. The next several hours passed strangely. David came home earlier than usual, pale, lips pressed tight. Not a word about the restaurant, not a word about the anniversary. He shut himself in his study and spent a long time on the phone, speaking in a muffled voice, almost a whisper. Sarah made dinner, ate alone, went to bed. At 10:30, her phone rang. An unknown number, a woman's voice, professional, composed. "Hello, I'm the manager at the Oak Room restaurant. Are you a relative of Ashley Coleman?" "Her sister-in-law," Sarah answered carefully. "I understand. Ashley is here with us. She suddenly became very ill during dinner. We've called an ambulance. It's on its way. Her boyfriend is quite shaken. We found her phone and saw you listed in her contacts as Sarah, Dave's wife." "I'm on my way," said Sarah. There was chaos at the restaurant. Ashley was lying on a couch in the lobby, pale, with red patches spreading across her skin, struggling to breathe. Her boyfriend sat beside her, holding her hand, not knowing what to do.
David was there too. Somehow he had arrived before Sarah, and when the paramedics approached Ashley and began trying to remove the dress to check her skin reactions, David suddenly grabbed one of the paramedics' arms. "Don't touch the dress," he said sharply. "Just don't take the dress off." The paramedic looked at him like he was losing his mind and did what needed to be done. Sarah stood 2 meters away and watched all of it. She said nothing. She simply remembered. Ashley was taken to the hospital with acute toxic poisoning, extensive skin damage, difficulty breathing, loss of coordination. Doctors initially suspected an allergic reaction, but the nature of the symptoms was too specific, too rapid. Tests were taken, samples of the dress fabric were taken. The results came back 2 days later. The fabric had been treated with a toxic contact agent. Not poison in the classical sense, more like an aggressive chemical compound that, with prolonged skin contact, causes severe poisoning. The dosage had been calculated for extended contact, an entire evening at a restaurant, several hours. Ashley had worn the dress only briefly and had been seated at the restaurant for about 40 minutes. That's what saved her. The detective asked Sarah routine questions. She answered briefly and precisely. She described the dress, the gift, how Ashley had taken it, the phone call from David, his reaction, the fact that he had shouted, "Don't touch the dress," at the restaurant. Then she unlocked her phone and showed the message history, and the screenshots of the bank transactions, and the life insurance policy, the one where the named beneficiary was David. The detective listened without a word. From there, everything moved quickly, as it usually does when the evidence already exists, and the guilty party hasn't had time to construct a convincing alternative narrative. It came out that David had debts, serious ones, accumulated over the past year and a half. Several private loans, maxed out credit cards, money owed to a business partner who, by all accounts, was not a patient man. It also came out that there was a woman, not in the sense of a romantic story, but in the sense of someone who helped him solve practical problems, including sourcing the right chemical compound through her contacts, including structuring the insurance policy so the payout would come through as quickly as possible. Sarah listened to all of it from the detective and felt something strange. Not rage, not grief, more like a cold recognition, the feeling you get when you look at an untangled knot and think, yes, that's exactly what I felt. Ashley was discharged from the hospital 3 weeks later. The skin damage healed slowly, some scarring, likely permanent. She called Sarah herself. The conversation was short. "I know you two weren't happy," Ashley said, "that something was off between you, but I always thought you were too hard on him, that you were just cold, that you didn't appreciate him." "I know that's what you thought," Sarah replied. "I was wrong," Ashley said quietly. A long pause. "He used me as a tool, didn't he?" Ashley asked. "He counted on the fact that if you didn't put it on, I would take it, because I always take things that aren't mine." Sarah didn't answer, not because she was cruel, just because the answer was obvious. "I'm sorry," said Ashley. "For everything. For the coffee, for the scarves, for never being on your side." "Just get better," Sarah said. "That's enough." She hung up. The divorce was quiet. Sarah's attorney was a meticulous man with a habit of wearing bow ties and asking precise follow-up questions. He reviewed everything Sarah had carefully gathered over the previous months, every screenshot, every transaction, every strange phrase she had recorded on her phone's voice memo app. Sarah hadn't known exactly why she'd been collecting it all, probably because she was used to tracking numbers that didn't add up. The apartment stayed with her. It had been purchased before the marriage, and that mattered. The joint account wasn't much. David had spent nearly everything paying off debts. Her attorney said to her at the end, "You are remarkably calm for someone who survived an attempt on their life." Sarah thought for a moment. "I work in procurement," she answered. "We're trained to notice when something doesn't add up." Several months passed. David awaited trial. The woman who had helped him obtain the chemical compound made a deal with prosecutors in exchange for a reduced sentence. David's debts turned out to be even larger than Sarah had thought. His business partner, the one he owed money to, came to the detective's office on his own, with documents. The insurance policy was voided. Sarah still worked in procurement, still loved the order in numbers, still drank her morning coffee looking out at the streets of Chicago. She didn't think of David as something terrifying. She didn't flinch in the night. She didn't endlessly replay things in her mind. What if I'd noticed sooner? What if she simply lived, quietly, steadily, the way she always had? Sometimes she thought about Ashley. She called once a month, briefly, about nothing in particular. "How are you?" "Fine. And you?" "Same. Take care. You too." That was something. Not friendship, but something. One day a friend asked her, "Do you regret marrying him?" Sarah thought about it honestly. "No," she said. "He reminded me of something important." "What exactly?" "That I know how to notice when the numbers don't add up, and that skill is worth more than it seems." Her friend laughed. Sarah didn't, but there was something in her eyes that looked a lot like a smile. "You know what's the difference between a victim and a survivor? A victim doesn't notice. A survivor notices, but stays quiet until the right moment. Sarah was a survivor. She always had been.